At the door. My neighbor died last month. I didn't know the old guy very well. His name was Brad. Whenever I saw him, his dog was right there. That's what we talked about, passing dog chatter. That little pug lives with me now. Sits at the front window, looking across the courtyard like she's waiting for him to come home. I think about his last day, even walked it. Up the street to the diner, the waitress there, across to Harmony Park and the stone chess tables, then the haircut, the grocery store, and back home, here. I've talked to the people who saw him, pieced together the details. But there's no one to ask what happened next. Just the dog. What did she see? Some mornings I catch myself watching the courtyard with her, half expecting the man to walk by. I wish I'd been home that night. Coop's Diner. Deb checked the front window again. Any minute now. This time they were there, Brad and his dog coming up the sidewalk. She pulled the little green pad from her apron pocket. "Start Brad's," she hollered through the stainless serving window. The cook knew the order. She wrote it anyway. 2 eggs over easy, hash browns, bacon medium, English muffin, black coffee. It looked different on the page, but that's what it meant. With a quick spin, she sent the ticket wheel around. Same way she'd done for 22 years. They'd tried the new stuff, touch screens and wireless, but it took more time than it saved. All that crap sat boxed in the back now. The bell over the entrance chimed, and she called over without looking. "I've got you in, hun. Coffee's coming." Brad cut up the narrow row behind the counter stools. Booths lined the street front window, green vinyl, 2 to a table, fixed to the wall. He stopped at the last one, tossed a newspaper onto the clean surface, folded his jacket onto the near seat, then swung into the other side. Deb let him get settled before sliding his cup over. They'd done this long enough. She knew her part. "We have cheesecake for tonight. I can cut one early if you like," she told him, filling the cup. His eyes came up, interested. "Let me eat breakfast first. Probably, though." Outside, traffic moved just beyond the wide sidewalk. Business fronts without lots. His dog lay out on the concrete, untied. Brakes squealed, horns, people rushing by, but the dog stayed put, waiting. "I saved a few bones for Briscoe. Got 'em wrapped." She liked the name, Briscoe. Didn't quite fit for a female, but that was it. Brad tested the heat on his coffee, smiling through it. "Thanks," he said. "Just be a minute," she told him, leaning a hip against the opposite seat. The place was nearly empty. A couple of regulars at the counter, already finished. "No rush," he said, spinning the headline around and patting the paper. She used to find one of those at every table. He was going to say something about the news. That's what he did when she lingered. Sounded better than the alternative, filling empty ketchup bottles or the salt and pepper shakers. He read the bold print out loud. "Cubs moved to 3-1. That was good. Tips were better when the Cubs won. "Still reading," he said. "Extra innings." He held his coffee high, leaning over the page. That was her cue. Walking away, she said, "I'll get your eggs." The cook hadn't called, but she knew the rhythm. The metal clatter, ceramic plates coming off their stacks, even the spring-loaded snap of the English muffin. Then the call came. "Order up. Big Bad Brad. Deb didn't think the man was big or bad, but when it was slow, that's what the cook yelled. She slipped the platter down, grabbed 2 extra butter pats, a full ketchup, and headed back. This was the best part of a shift, showing up with a load of grub. Brad leaned back, sliding his newspaper to the side, giving her room, eager but not rushing. Deb let him do his thing. He ran his eyes over the food, like he was counting, poking at the hash browns, turning the plate just so, then looked up at her. "Well?" she asked. He picked up a slice of bacon and held it level, drawing it in. "Perfect bend," he said, taking a bite. "Not too crisp, not too soft." The words came out between chews. Her hip was against the booth again. The 2 customers up front were gone. Left paper money on the counter. This early crowd still did that. Both men worked nearby. "I can have the cook throw down a couple extra strips," she offered. He was going to say no, but she wanted to talk. "No thanks," was all he said. She waited, then tried another line. "Cubs can close it out today." She slipped into the facing booth, ready to move on if he didn't bite on this. He popped a yolk with his bacon, stirring it. Then his eyes shifted over to the paper, unfolding it with his free hand. He found the schedule. 2:00, he said. "But I didn't think you were a fan." He looked over, chopping his hash browns into the yellow. "Not really," she told him. "But I know you are." The place was quiet, just the hum of the walk-in when the door was left open too long. The cook must be inside. Brad was talking now. "It's already been a decade. I ain't got another 60 years. She nodded along, knew the gist of what he meant. Then he was back on the food, saying, "That bacon was perfect." She laughed, making the same offer. "We got more in the back." This is what she wanted, just sitting with the man. The front bell rang, and her head came around. A young couple she didn't know was coming in. She stood and reached for the coffee pot, topping off Brad's cup. Stepping away, she said, "Eat slow. We're not done. Cheesecake, dog bones, and one other thing." She let that sit, watching. He was looking down, working the cold butter into a lukewarm muffin. Nearly 6 years she'd been serving him breakfast, 3 or 4 times a week. This is what they did. She'd try again when she brought over Briscoe's treats. She turned towards the front. Deb let her feet and hands do the work, said the right words, sat the customers, went through choices, drinks, and menus, still thinking on Brad. He sat down there, leafing through his paper, a little food left on his plate, wore a simple button-down shirt and a pair of old Levi's. He wasn't some old man in a tweed jacket and bow tie like these kids here might see him. Brad seemed like every guy she ever went to high school with, back before smiles were polished. In his regular booth, doing his thing. Maybe he was waiting. She got back on the move. The order wheel came around and she snapped the new ticket in place, calling it out. Burgers. That would take a few minutes, enough time to check on Brad. She led with the coffee pot, and he put a hand over his cup. "I got to stop at 2, he said, plate clean but still chewing. "You only had 1.5, not even," she told him. The pot hovered over his hand until he moved it away. Stopping at half, she set the pot on the table and slipped onto the vinyl. The paper was spread out in sections, and he began folding it back together. She helped, keeping her eyes on that. "I want to ask you something," she said, "but don't answer. Just think about it." "Shoot," he said. Easy for him. She was doing the hard part. The fry timer started to squeal. Quiet if you weren't listening for it. Just as she stood, the front door chimed again. A group coming in. She looked without thinking, taking a step in that direction. Brad was watching her now. "I'll have the cheesecake when you come back," he said. She didn't want to wait. Laid it all out, finished fast. Said the last of it walking away. "Just think about it, okay?" Moving, working in a haze, those parts of her day that passed by without her. Deb's mind was on Brad's cheesecake. This new group ordered from the breakfast menu. She stepped through it with them, laughing at the right spots, keeping an ear on the kids 3 booths over. Easy enough. She moved behind the counter and was back out with drinks, coffee, soda, a pitcher of ice water. Brad was over his paper again, but she caught his eye and held up a finger, mouthing, 1 minute. He smiled. She was reading into it. Shut that right down. In the back again, she knelt and swung open a stainless door. Cold desserts, a stack of boxes off to the side. Deb cut one of the cakes into 8 slices, cheating, one a bit too big. She set it on a cold saucer and licked her finger. No one was watching. No coffee pot this trip, just the cheesecake. The door chimed again. She should have been ahead of it. Even without turning, she got a count. Loud voices, shuffling feet. The door passed from one hand to another. Too many. She set the saucer in front of Brad and gave a small shrug, still half turned towards the room. A line of them were headed for the big corner booth. She nodded their way. He had his fork up, and she took it away, handing him a clean one. "Thanks," he said, setting the silver beside the plate, like he had time. "I'll be in tomorrow, Deb." She couldn't remember him saying her name before. She set his check on the edge of the table, already stepping away. "I'll bring the bones over before you go," she said, raising her voice as she walked. "Or tomorrow," he called after her. Harmony Park. Players brought their own pieces. Checkers, chess. Garrett had his. A row of stone tables lined the walk here, each topped with a checkerboard pattern. The paint was faded, but ground in. It still had the look. A small bench on each side. He saw the old guy, Brad, coming across the grass. His little mutt was wandering the trees, staying close. Garrett called out, "Hey, Schlick!" Too loud, a bit too drunk for morning. But this guy was easy to beat, always fucked up his openings. Time to set up. Garrett was fast, both arms working, 2 or 3 pieces between the knuckles of each hand, arranged, nudged, then slapped down the queen just as Brad stepped up. Garrett leaned over, snapping his fingers at the dog. Briscoe stood back, watching. "That dog don't like me," he said. "She wants these," Brad told him, holding up a bundle wrapped in butcher paper. He tore a hole in one end, pulling out a bone, and dropped it under the table. Then the man worked onto the stone bench, touching his pieces, getting settled. "You ready?" he asked. Garrett shot up a thumb. "You bet, long as you don't do nothing stupid." He took a quick drink, then slipped the bottle back inside his coat. Brad brought out his king's pawn. Right away, Garrett matched it, warning the guy. "Don't reach for that bishop," but knowing he would. He didn't, went for his knight instead. Not missing a beat, Garrett said, "Sassy Brad's getting froggy." The old guy had opened with the same 3 moves every game. Not today. Garrett was still talking shit, blinking through options, then brought out his own knight. Brad was already on the board, hands steady, out and back. Garrett had nothing to say about that. The park wasn't empty. A few players were around the other tables. One checkers, getting loud. Kids were playing frisbee, on the run with a mom calling after them. Quiet here, though. Garrett thinking it through, hand hovering. After a minute, Brad spoke up. "You ever been to Coop's?" Garrett's hand came down, making his play. "What?" Brad moved without pause, eyes running lines. "Coop's, that diner over on Lincoln." Garrett knew the place. "It has a blue chicken on the sign." "Yeah, that's the one. I had breakfast there this morning. You been there?" He was trying to listen, but Brad was snapping out moves. Garrett got his answer out. "Sure. Now shut up and let me think." He made a trade on the board, annoyed with it. The old guy traded right back, still talking. "That waitress asked me out today." Garrett stopped cold. "What the fuck?" Brad set him straight. "Not that one." Garrett laughed. Right, the old one." Brad wasn't smiling back, said, "Easy now." Bottle coming out, Garrett toasted the air. "This one's for you, Slick." He took a pull. Brad nodded. "Just play. It's your move." Garrett's eyes were back on his pieces. He was a pawn down and making it worse, exposing his king, trying to get out of this. Under the table, the dog was cracking into that bone, could hear it split, wet and steady. Brad's hands were up now, shielding his eyes, thinking too long. Garrett scanned the lines, looking for it. Then the move was on the board. Fuck. Got his queen pinned. He could throw a few pieces in the way, but it was coming. "Shit, man!" Garrett slapped the stone table, harder than he meant. It stung. "I can't play with you yapping the whole time." Brad shrugged. "Sorry." Garrett flexed his hands. "Well, it's too fucking late now, isn't it?" Heads turned. A tall guy at the next table lifted his chin, others following his gaze. Garrett brought his voice down. "Let's play." He blocked with a pawn. No point. Brad would just take the piece, and the queen was pinned again. A few players were coming over, the tall guy leading the way. Before they got there, Brad asked, "You want to start this one over?" Garrett pushed in his pieces, half of them falling, wood clacking against the stone, answering his way. "You gonna shut up this time?" The guys were at the table now, others coming in behind them. The tall one smiled, big at Garrett. "You lose?" He snapped back fast. "We didn't finish. Go play your own damn game." The tall guy was still asking, looking at Brad now. "He lose?" Brad was lining up his pieces, said low, "You heard the man." No one was leaving. More were coming over. Garrett finished setting up, eyes across the table. "Let's do this," he said. The king's pawn came out. Garrett did the same, finding his game voice. "Here we go." Had 5 guys watching now. The night followed, Brad not even looking up. "Okay, Slick, you're going to do that same shit again." Garrett stayed with it, mirroring their last game, ready this time. The tall guy went around behind Brad, watching from the other side. Another followed along, the two standing together, the old guy getting a rooting section. Both players worked the board, same as before, move for move. Garrett was looking to make a change, not finding it. He pulled his hand back, slowing it down. "You like her? That waitress?" he asked, opening his coat to get at his bottle. "We talking again?" Brad said, leaning to the side, checking under the table. The dog popped out, eyes on the crowd. The tall guy spoke up. "You're just stalling, Garrett." Garrett took a drink, mind working the board, said, "Thought I told you to go away." Brad slid another bone out of the paper wrap and held it low, saying, "Take your time." The hand came back up empty. "I don't need no time. Just asking if you like the girl." "The woman," Brad corrected. "Whatever. That then." Garrett still hadn't moved, counting through the swaps, unsure. Then he made his play anyway. Taking the trade, Brad set it on his side of the table. "I like her just fine," he said, like he was talking about the piece. That was it, seeing it too late. Different, but Garrett's queen was trapped again. The tall guy bumped shoulders with the one next to him, whispering. "You need to shut the fuck up," Garrett said, both palms ready to push off the table. "Settle down, little Lou." The tall guy laughed as he said it. Garrett came up. The others cleared back. Tall guy alone now, standing his ground. No one was laughing, words flying. Garrett stepped in, yelling, "Get back to your own damn table." He caught Brad's eye on that, the old man sitting still, easy, just watching. The look held. Garrett's shoulders came down. Needed a damn drink. He reached inside his coat. The tall guy flinched, fists up fast. Garrett ducked back, pulling his bottle, waving the glass. "It's a drink, asshole." Everyone gave them room, a loose ring forming. The mother and her kids were gone, Frisbee left in the grass. A thin line of words came over the noise. "So what do you think?" Brad said. The question landed nowhere. Garrett barely heard it. The tall guy's eyes darted away and came right back, confused, asking, "What?" Brad kept on it. "Should I go out with her?" He was still sitting, the small pug tight against his leg. "You talking to me?" Garrett asked. "Sure." Brad glanced at the tall guy. "Or him." The noise started coming down. Most of them were looking at Brad now. "I think I should," he said. His arm came up onto the table. The pieces clicked together, bunching up, some falling over. "Don't do that, man," the tall guy said. "You were winning." Brad kept sliding the pieces, slow and careless. The position was lost. No winners. Nothing left to watch. The circle started breaking apart, guys mumbling as they walked away. Garrett came around to his seat. Brad was still talking. "What do you think, Garrett?" The tall guy pushed both palms out. "Fuck this," he said, walking away. Garrett looked at the board, then at Brad. "About the game or the girl?" Brad didn't answer right away. He watched the tall guy cross the grass. Then he said, "You think I'd know, wouldn't you?" He picked up the bundle of bones. "I have to get to the barber." Brad stepped over to the walkway, Briscoe following close. Garrett came too, talking low. "Hey, Brad. Sorry what I said about the waitress." Brad nodded. "Her name's Deb." "Yeah, Deb. Sorry for calling her old." Garrett's eyes shifted back towards the table. "And that, too," he said. Brad was tucking at the butcher paper as they walked, closing the tear. Garrett slowed, still talking. "It was a shit position, but I might have gotten out of it." The Frisbee lay in the grass where the kids had left it. Brad stopped, picked it up, and turned it once in his hand. Without looking back, he said, "We'll see, Garrett. It goes fast." Then he flipped the disc onto the breeze. Briscoe chased a few steps and stopped, watching it arc away. Clean cuts. The place was closed for lunch. Don stayed inside, but he had the window sign flipped. left the door unlocked. Brad would show up early. The man always did. First Monday of every month. The hinge whined. This place was too small for a bell. It had a single barber chair. A mirror ran one wall with a row of seats against the other. In the back, an old coffee table stood in front of a cushioned bench. Don sat there. He was finishing his sandwich, leafing through a Sports Illustrated. It had a young Michael Jordan on the cover. Had been here 30 years. It was probably a collector's item. "You ain't Mike," Brad said. "Yeah, well, neither are you." Don held up the picture, chin out, and said, "Least I'm the right color." Brad was hanging up his coat. His dog passed and jumped up onto the first seat, feet restless. That little pug wouldn't settle until the man did. Don slid his empty lunchbox under the bench and stood, letting Brad take care of the door. He gave the blind a tug, helping it roll up, then flipped the sign and came over. The tile was clean but old. A broom leaned in one corner, holding back a pile of hair. Don would sweep up after this cut. Knew Brad didn't mind. At the counter now, Don was getting ready. Could do most of this with the electric clippers. A little scissor work after to balance it out. Brad lifted himself into the heavy chair, pulling his arms in. Don let him adjust, then brought the cape around and fixed on the paper collar. That did it. Briscoe eased, resting her chin on her paws. Neither man was talking. He'd let Brad decide that. After a minute, he did, saying, "Well, I've had a day." Don worked the hair first, taking his time, listening. "Yeah," he said. Brad's head was tilted forward, talking to his lap. "Got asked on a date, and had a fight." The clippers buzzed low, as much feel as sound. The lines were still there, only a month of growth. Don tapped along the edges. "Same person?" he asked. "The date and the fight?" No. Deb, that waitress, and a couple of fellas at the park." A lot of stories came out of this chair. This one had promise. "Tell me about the fight," Don said. "You say it was two guys?" Brad laughed, his hairline moving. No, not me. They were at each other." That made more sense. Don couldn't imagine this old guy in a fistfight. Brad was telling it, making it hard to follow. "The fella I was playing got lippy when he started to lose. Did I tell you we were playing chess? Well, we were." Comb out, Don came around, checking the front. "And you were winning?" he asked. "Yeah, surprise, right?" Brad said. "So this fella comes off the table, swinging a whiskey bottle." The clippers were buzzing again, Don working across the bangs, combing them back, asking, "Was it a white guy?" "He was," Brad said. "Why you ask?" "Just listening. You tell me a guy swinging a bottle of booze at the park, I'm hoping it's a white guy." Brad gave him the answer again. "It was. I couldn't tell with the other one, though. Tall guy. Wasn't white, but he wasn't black either." They grew up in the same world, a place before cable TV and VCRs, streets with payphones and newspaper boxes. Had seen it all from different sides of the city. Don was trimming the eyebrows now. "I don't get these kids at the park," he said. "Not kids. These guys were in their 20s, Brad told him. "Yeah, young," Don said, bringing the chair around to show Brad the mirror. "I've got more in common with an old white guy like you than a black kid at the park. When did that happen?" The phone cut over the answer, a good, solid ring, Same old AT&T phone that sat on the counter when Don bought the shop. He had the receiver up on the first ring. "Clean cuts," he said, stepping out of Brad's sight line. Don nodded at the reflection, pulling at the cord. At the appointment book, he crossed off a name. "Tomorrow's fine," he said. "Same time." He set the heavy receiver back into its metal cradle, saying, "Got a no-show." Brad was looking himself over, hands brushing at his temples. Don came around behind the chair, still checking the balance around the ears. He knew the answer, but said it anyway. "This would have been a perfect time for that shave." "No way." Brad started up like he'd been asked something serious. "Not for me. This is good enough," he said, running his fingers through his hair, messing it up. Don loosened the cape and popped the collar, saying, I know. I wasn't asking." Brad pushed forward, weight coming over his feet. Briscoe sat up fast, the two looking the same. Brad hovered there, idle. Then he dropped back into the chair. "Let's do it," he said. "The shave." Don didn't act surprised. He was. 10 years of no. "Is this about that date?" he asked, shaking out the cape and bringing it back over. He fastened on a fresh collar and pressed the Velcro into place. Briscoe had her head back down, looking cheated, ears turned slightly towards Brad as he talked. "Probably for Deb, yeah," he said. "Been thinking on it." The towel was hot, steam lifting. Don's hands were used to it. "This is a good time to think," he said. "Relax." He worked the wet heat into Brad's skin, gentle with the cloth. Don always took his time here, but this was the man's first real shave. Don would telegraph his moves, talk his way through it. He waited until he felt Brad give in to the chair, letting it take his full weight. Oil first, on the cheeks, jaw, and upper lip, guiding it down the rough skin of the neck. Brad squeezed his eyes tight, starting to fight the chair. Don kept his voice steady, spelling it out, the foam brush knocking light against the ceramic mug. He worked the lather in short circles up the jawline. Brad broke. "Jesus, man," he said. "I can smell your damn sandwich." Brush still moving, Don worked the foam lower, saying, "Trust me, if I use mouthwash, this is just gonna get weirder." That got Brad laughing. His hands eased on the armrests. Don gave him time, then started with the razor, stretching the skin at Brad's temple, pulling clean paths through the foam, bringing the blade around. It was starting to feel like the haircut now, Brad sitting easy, giving in to the work. "Where's this date going?" Don asked. "A cousin's wedding. Maybe she said niece." Brad was breathing easy now, voice heavy. "I can't remember. I was sort of deer in headlights. She didn't even let me answer." Don shifted sides, hands precise, getting to know Brad's face. The man's skin had seen some time. Wasn't a drinker, no smoke damage. But there were scars. Might have been the closest anybody had seen him in years. Briscoe's head came up, like that little dog knew what Don was thinking. Reaching into the steamer, he finally said, "You should go, to the wedding." He took out one of the towels. From under the warm cloth, Brad answered back, "I know." Don took his time, working the aftershave into his palms. Brad rested, eyes closed, his dog doing the watching for him. He had been in this chair more than 100 times, and Don didn't know the man's last name. Paid cash. Same dog, same coat. Thought maybe the shoes were the same too. set square on the footrest just below the cape. Customers like Brad kept the lights on. Don was happy to give the man a shave, hoping he'd go out with the waitress. He slapped his palms together, waking the room, the oak and citrus brisk. He slipped both hands under the towel, onto Brad's cheeks, holding there. The man didn't flinch, just relaxed while Don worked the ointment in, hands firm along the jaw. Briscoe moved before Brad did, both of them sitting up as the towel came away. Blinking wide, he said, "Well, hell, Don, you've been holding out on me." Don spun the chair around, laughing. "You want me to put you down for next month?" Brad touched his knuckles to his cheeks, leaning into the mirror. "Maybe sooner," he said. "Let me find out what day that wedding is." The two worked the cape clear, Don brushing away the stray hair. At the door, Brad slipped into his coat, Briscoe's nails light on the tile. "Call me when you know," Don said, heading for the broom. D.P. Grocers. Briscoe knew this part. Brad was inside, through the glass, getting food. He would come out soon, and they would walk home. They would eat together, then lie down in the moving light. She would sleep then. When she woke, Brad would be sleeping too. It would be dark, or sometimes the moving light still bounced over the walls. For now, Briscoe waited, catching glimpses of Brad inside, weaving through the gaps. Home wasn't far. If she lost sight of him for too long, she would go there. That never happened. Brad always came back. Her ears tilted, searching the glass. He was talking inside, coming out soon. Briscoe stretched, getting ready, nose working the air. The door hissed. Leading with the bag, Brad stepped out, already moving. Briscoe fell in step, paws over the warm surface. There were cars here, small stretches of grass. If she wandered, a call would come quick. Brad started to rummage the bag, the paper fighting his arm. His hand came up fast, to his mouth, then back inside the bag. Briscoe watched, her weight forward, eyes tracking the movement. Again the hand dipped, Brad chewing. He eyed her way, and she opened her mouth, tongue out. "You don't want this," he said. She did, still looking, both walking. They knew the way. Brad's hand came out of the bag again, holding something up, small, round. It looked soft. He tossed it ahead, rolling up the hard walk. She scampered after, plucking it up just before it rolled into the grass. Cool, thin-skinned, sweet. She spit it out, looking back at Brad. He was laughing. "I told you." Briscoe picked the treat back up, mouthing it. Brad passed. She bit down and it popped. She'd had these before, didn't like them. She swallowed it. Brad was stopped at the curb, and she caught up, waiting at his side. The walk here dropped into the street. He stepped down, and she followed, staying close. Some cars stopped, some kept moving. They walked together to the other side. The high fence here led home. She could fit through, but Brad had to go around. They went around. Looking through the thick bars, across the courtyard, Briscoe could see that man, the one always going in and out, right there. He was moving towards his own door now, hand jingling. The man put his arm up, and Brad did too. Briscoe looked from one to the other, keeping her steps in line. Past the gate, up their own walk, she moved away, free to roam here. The grass was wet without rain. She nosed around in it, the planter boxes and dirt. There were smells left here while she was away. She added her own over those. Brad was jingling now, too, and she trotted over, waiting for their door to open. It didn't. Facing the wrong way, Brad stared across the grass. There was nothing there. The other man had gone inside. It was quiet. Little things moved in the bushes and on the wind. Distant cars stopped and went again, but there was nothing to see. Brad was looking anyway. Finally, his hand came back and pushed open the door. Briscoe rushed inside. They would eat soon, rest, and then maybe eat again. Briscoe was happy to be home. The front room was small. Briscoe moved ahead, crossed the thick, soft floor, onto the smooth area where the food would soon be. Her water was here, the full dish next to an empty one. She drank, tongue pulling at the surface, listening while Brad moved things from the food bag. He was quiet, not talking about the eating plan, but setting it out. She could smell it. Turning to her now, talking in that light voice. "You want this?" He held out the empty sack. Briscoe stepped towards him, muzzle up. She wanted the food on the counter, but she would tear up that paper while she waited. Brad tossed it high, letting it drift down. Briscoe landed on the bag's center, crumpling loud as it collapsed into the floor. Brad always laughed when she did this. He wasn't now. She jumped at the bag again, tearing off a piece, but he had turned back to his work, not watching. She walked away, over to the soft floor, and lay down. The bag rustled, Brad kicking it to one side. Then the little hard sounds on the counter. The smell came. Food, the cold sweet from outside. Warm bread and savory meats. The good bits that would come later if she waited right. Brad moved into the other room and back, then away again. The food stayed where it was. Briscoe watched from the soft floor, chin down between her paws. The light from the window lay across the room, touching the table legs, then the chair. It drifted slowly. Brad came in and sat on the couch. No plate. Both arms hung loose, his eyes on nothing. One hand went up to his face. Briscoe lifted her head. That smell was still on him, the new smell from the place with the tall chair. It was on his cheeks, his neck, his hands when he reached out. It wasn't Brad. He rubbed his face once and gave a little laugh through his nose. "First real shave," he said. Briscoe watched his mouth. He looked over, telling her, "I didn't hate it." His hand dropped, quiet again. The food stayed in the other room. Briscoe settled her chin back down, waiting for something to happen. The shadows moved and she slept. When she woke, Brad was gone. The light soft now. She could hear him in the other room. The food smell was still there, uneaten where he had left it. That was wrong. His coat was here, over the back of the chair. One half hung low. She knew what was inside. It smelled good. Briscoe went closer and nosed the sleeve, then pulled. The coat shifted, the paper inside giving a soft crackle. She froze, expecting Brad. He was still in the other room. She worked her mouth over the edge of the bundle and pulled. The coat slid. Then the paper came loose, dropping to the floor. This wasn't allowed. Briscoe stood over it, waiting for Brad's voice. It didn't come. She took the bundle by one corner and dragged it under the low table, paws working at the paper. The smell opened wider. She heard Brad and stopped, mouth still on her prize. He looked at her, then at the coat, then at the mess under the table. Usually his voice came quick, loud, words like "no" or "Briscoe" or "damn it." This time he came over slowly and sat on the couch beside the table, like he was tired. He reached under and took the bundle from her. Briscoe let it go, ears low, ready to move back if his voice changed. It didn't. Brad opened the paper. "That's from Deb," he said, holding out a bone. Briscoe took it carefully, still watching close. "She gave us those," he said, sitting back into the couch. "And cherry cheesecake." Briscoe lowered the bone onto the carpet. Brad didn't stop her, just said, "Cherry is my favorite." The food was still in the kitchen. Brad looked over that way, then back. Had more to say. "Pretty good day, huh?" Briscoe worked at the edge of the bone. Brad's hand came down and rested on her head. Not rubbing, just staying there. Still talking, he said, "Got me a shave." His fingers moved once along her ear. "And I won that game." Briscoe cracked the bone, then stopped because his voice had changed. Not louder, not sad in a way she knew, just further away. "I mean, I was winning," he said, hand moving again. She chewed. The bone turned soft under her teeth. Brad leaned his head back against the couch. His eyes closed for a while. "Good day," he said. The light left the table legs. The room faded into gray. Outside, doors closed. A car came in loud and fell quiet. Above, sometimes water moved through the walls. Brad got up. Briscoe lifted her head, mouth still busy. He went into the kitchen. For a moment, she thought the food would come out now. She stood, one paw on the last of the bone. Brad didn't get the food. He came back with the leash. Briscoe looked down, then came over. The leash meant outside, maybe across the courtyard. Brad bent and clipped it on. His hand lingered at her neck. Too long. She waited, holding still. "Come on," he said quietly, and they went out. The air had changed, cooler now. The lights along the walk had come on, the edges holding the days wet. Briscoe moved ahead. They crossed the courtyard, not stopping. The leash nagged at her. Briscoe knew this part. It had happened before. Brad would take her to the man's door, the one across the grass. He would tie the leash there and go away. She didn't like it, waiting for Brad to come back. Once he had been gone for a long time, long enough for her belly to ache. Then his step had come back through the dark, and his hand had found the leash, and they had gone home. They were at that door now, stopped. Briscoe looked up. There was no sound inside. Brad fixed the leash around the door handle, his fingers working slow. Then he stepped away. Briscoe followed, the leash going tight. Brad crouched, knees wide. He put his hand on her head and ran his thumb once between her eyes. "You stay," he said. Briscoe didn't want to do that. Brad turned away. She stepped with him, but the leash pulled her back, a noise coming from her throat. He walked. She thought he might turn back. Sometimes he did. Sometimes he came back after only a few steps, making a sound of his own, and took her home. He crossed the courtyard. Briscoe watched. At their door, he stopped, holding a moment. Then it opened, and he went inside. The door closed. Briscoe stood at the leash's limit, waiting. Brad would come back. Across the courtyard. I don't know what happened that day. If there was just one thing, I can't see it. The dog is here now. For a while, she stared across the courtyard every morning. Less now. Some days she doesn't go to the front window at all. Today, someone else is moving into that place. Boxes, voices, feet on the concrete. Briscoe watched for a while, her tail tapping the floor. Then she moved away from the window and put her head down.